The stuff which makes you money on Amazon is figuring out niches, is optimizing supply chain, is getting your pricing nailed down. It is dealing with returns and clearing them all up. All the super boring stuff that no one really wants to understand. And I won't lie, it's way harder than everyone makes it sound. And it requires so much hard work. And even after 20 years of people management, I still mess it up dramatically. But Amazon at the end of the day is a real business. And if you don't treat it like that, you'll get shut down really quick and you'll lose a lot of money. At a fundamental level, raising your standards, tracking the shit out of everything, and just really asking great questions about how can we improve this business to get better. But if you never fail, you have not tried. So therefore, it's like as part of what we do, you have to expect that. You have to expect those days where you are going to sit on the end of the bed and cry, because that's just part of the parcel of the life we decide to live, which is part of it.
What's up, guys? Today we're here with Tom, FastTrack FBA. And instead of doing the traditional long, drawn-out intro, we're just going to get right into it. Give us a super brief one of yourself, maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes.
Wow, where do I start? Okay, cool. I'm 39 now. My God, I'm getting old. I live in Mexico City. I'm from England, you can probably tell. I started my entrepreneur journey at age 30. I studied electronic engineering. I've been a bar manager before that. I've done recruitment. My first business was in procurement, shut that down after a year. Second business was starting Amazon UK. Did that for like 6 years, I think. We peaked at $4 million in a single year in sales. Shut that one down about 2 years ago. I started FastTrack FBA about 6 years ago. Do services, VAs, leads. And then also as well started Amazon USA reselling. I think about 4 years ago. We did like 1.5 last year. And at my peak, I've had 88 VAs. Right now, we're much smaller, around about the 20 size. And I travel the world and I do everything nomadically. And like, I love to just talk about Amazon and everything about business. It's super fun.
Sweet. I'm curious, what do you think people think of you when they think of FastTrack FBA? That's a bit of a deep question to start us off here, but I have an idea of you in my head. I've been on your podcast before, and I've seen you a lot, but I think you have a good identity. But what do you think it is? What do you think people think of you?
It's hard. I think lots of people think different things, and I think the question is, what do you want to like come across as? And I think for me, the thing is, I'll tell you what my idea is that I really enjoy entrepreneurship. I really enjoy business. I really enjoy learning about it, and I enjoy sharing about it, and I enjoy being part of the community and discussing it. But there is a kind of there are two problems. One, in talking about it, you share about your business, which is good for everyone else, but actually can be detrimental to your business because you're giving everything away, which is the knowledge. But on the flip side, a lot of people don't actually do what people tell you to do. So therefore, it's kind of like, we all know what we need to do, which is called source and do the hard work. But a lot of people don't want to do that. So they'll hire VAs or they'll do tactical arbitrage, for example. So we always try and find shortcuts. But as Alex Hormozi said, the hard way is the only way, or the hard way is the easy way, because the easy way doesn't work. And then the other one is that the problem comes is for the mass viewership, it's generally entry-level things which are kind of maybe trending or kind of controversial ideas, but that's not the stuff which makes you money. The stuff which makes you money on Amazon is figuring out niches, is optimizing supply chain, is getting your pricing nailed down. It is dealing with returns and clearing them all up. All the super boring stuff that no one really wants to understand, but again, that's the hard way. And that's the stuff that really makes you money. And again, we always kind of look at the shiny object syndrome, whereas I want to go do TikTok. That looks fun. And you're like, but I should just invest those 10, 20 hours I have spare right now back into Amazon, and I'll double down on that. And that's the hard part, because from a content creator perspective, we want to get views, we want to be seen. But from a business owner perspective, I want to talk about the fun, the stuff which matters, but that isn't very engaging and very high view count. That make sense?
Yes. I think that's good. Yeah. You have a very in-depth thing. Like when I go look at your reels and stuff, even the way you clip up other people's, it's like really in-depth stuff. I was looking, some of mine started posting again. And I'm like, man, that was high-level stuff I was talking about back in the day. So it's good that you do that. And I see you as like the team guy. You're like, you always have this big team, and you always do that. I want to talk a lot about this pod, because we just had somebody on that did that, but I'm just more intrigued on your kind of thought process behind it. So what do you think about this big team? What kind of got you into that? And then, How's it looking now? How's it all structured?
So my first job out of university, I failed electronic engineering, by the way. And so I went into bar management, and my very first job was running a student union, like halls of residence bars. And we had like 5 different halls of residence, and there was a bar in each, physical different locations. And each bar had 20 staff, and I was the manager of 6 bars. So my first job, aged 21, was managing 120 staff. And then, so I'm like 39 now. So I've done like 20 years of people management. So I've always been very comfortable with people, and I think the point comes is that I know I have to do the hard work. I know I have to figure out things, but once I've figured out a problem, like I'm so bored. I just don't want to do it. And I want to go find the next challenge. I love problems. Give me problems, I'm the happiest man alive. But once I've figured out a problem, then it's like, okay, now I can get someone else to do it. And a really good example would be like when I worked in recruitment, I remember once you figure out how to make sales, it's just a numbers game. It's the same thing as like calling wholesalers. You've just got to call enough wholesalers, contact them, you go through it. And once you kind of figure out the process, it's just a grind. And it's like, man, I'm just bored of this. And so the reason why I build staff within my companies is the fact that once you figure out an element, you want to hire people into it. And I won't lie, it's way harder than everyone makes it sound. And it requires so much hard work. And even after 20 years of people management, I still mess it up dramatically. And the fundamental lesson I've learned is it is all about hiring the best people you can find. And I hate to say it, myself included, we all hire rubbish people. And that's the problem, because we're being too tight on cost, which is payroll, and not thinking about what value they're going to bring. And I can dive into that massively, but I just think at fundamental level is like, I did not do all this hard work, and I'm not going to live my life to grind. Like the same shit. I will grind to learn more, but once I've figured something out, I will hire someone to do it, and then we'll figure that out. And to put it in perspective, right now we do like 1.5 million, 10% net profit margins. I work, on a quiet week 4 hours, on a busy week 20 hours max if I really have to. But we have sources, we have admin, we have purchasing manager, and they just run it. Like they literally do the day to day, and I'm super happy with it. Like that's and for me, that's what, as an entrepreneur, we quit our jobs to start this business. And then what I generally see is a lot of people they'll replace their job income and then sit there. Maybe 1 or 2 will build a VA to kind of help them out. And what they'll do is continue to make a bit about the same money, but they don't ever get out of the business. They don't ever start building a system which can run the business. And by the way, all this is effing hard. It's hard enough just to build a business, let alone hire a few sources, then hire someone to do the purchasing, and then all the administration, and then run it consistently. And I've had like 15 purchasing managers, which is the hardest role to fill, because they're basically buyers. They're like you and me. But I think if you're not willing to do the work to get there, then like you're missing out on the massive upside. You've only achieved a small amount of the upside. And entrepreneurship is amazing because you have so much upside, which is incredible. The life, the time freedom, the location freedom with FBA, and on top of that, also as well the fact that you can make the money way more than you'd ever make I make it more in 1 month than I could make in a year sometimes. So it's incredible. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so what are your kind of thoughts about, we'll get into more of the staffing in a little bit, but where's kind of your thoughts about Amazon in general? A lot has changed since we last talked, probably about a year ago. Are you bullish on it? Are you trying to grow your business? Are you trying to stay the same? Or like, what are your thoughts?
We're growing, investing, and I'll explain 2 things. One, okay, if you define, so in Amazon, there are 2 types of seller, private label and resellers. OA, wholesale, for example. So I'm only going to talk about wholesale. In the wholesale space, or in the resale space, I've broken it down by 3 types of seller. Beginner, 0 to 10K a month. Like interested, getting going. Then you've got middle, which is like 10 to 100K per month. They're kind of like your middle of the ground. Like they're kind of like, they're going to start making money. They're taking it seriously, but they're probably still in a job, and their game is to get out of the job. And when they hit 100K, they're generally out of a job, and now it's full-time, I'm going big seller. And that might go from 100K a month up to like 50 million a year, the Amazon Lits of the world. With the advent of Section 3s, lots of risk, that middle ground, 10 to 100,000, has been completely decimated. Lots of people I see right now have just fallen out. You still get a lot of brand new sellers who are very interested, but they're a lot more beginner. They're like, they're just kind of, it's all a side hustle, and they come and go. You always see that. You got a lot of big sellers who've been well established and they've probably been around and we all know who they are. We've seen them for a long period of time. They're pretty good. Just the middle ground, a lot of that's disappeared because they're like, I got hit by Section 3, or like I had a VA and we bought some bad deals, something happened, or it's just too risky, I'm not interested. So I've seen that area, like a lot of it disappear quite a lot. But for me, and interesting, if you just think about the private label side, think about, I was talking to someone this morning, think about all the aggregators. 5 years ago, there were aggregators like you could not believe. They were buying each other because there was so much money to be made. All the aggregators have stopped now. There's just that opportunity, or the business model of like efficiency of scale, like they're saying like, I think is not really there anymore, which is quite interesting. And again, I'm not in the space, so I can't comment too much. But for me personally, the question I ask is, if you are not going to do this, what would you do instead? And John, you're doing an amazing job right now of the influencer program, and I absolutely love what you're doing. And I think a lot of people are maybe trying these things as well. But if you've got capital right now to invest, and you have an Amazon business which is doing, 50 to 100K, and you have generally a good operation, there's no better way to make money than just to invest that. It's such an easy business model to run, and you can then transition to Walmart. It's good for us. We haven't found it's been so successful in what we're doing, but and I think Best Buy started up. Target has now got its own third-party platform. It's super interesting. But I just think Amazon's such a great business model and it's such a great way to turn money, but it has an element of risk. And I've even asked sellers who are doing 15 million a year, I'm like, what are you doing with all your money? They're like, I'm still in on Amazon. I'm like, why? And they're like, I just can't do anything else with my money. I'd never get this return on investment. It's pointless. So why would I not? And they're generally wholesale. They have good suppliers. They know the supply chain. So we're pretty happy. But that's the thing. It's like, are you confident in your supply chain? And then you're okay.
And you do all wholesale?
And we do about 50% OA and 50% wholesale.
Okay. That's interesting, that the thing you said about the middle class being wiped out, really, the Amazon space, because, John's stopped a lot of his selling. I've completely stopped selling. And we were kind of the middle. I mean, I had months that were 250K and I was usually above 100, but still I saw myself dropping towards that. And yeah, it's just I just saw it as a bit too risky. But, the way that you talk about it, and we talk about these guys with systems, I really wish I would have thought about it in that way. Of I should have built a system and let it be. Because if you don't have a system, grinding 100K, 150K a month, it's hard, man. I think that's where people, I don't know why, I think it's the U.S. mentality or something, because all the overseas guys, they all have teams. U.S. guys, they just like to hustle, and it's you can only hustle for so long and you just quit. So that was my next thing too. Why do you think that? Why do you see a disconnect there between a lot of because you and Gavin and those type of guys, you guys all have big teams, and the U.S. guys, you see a lot of one-man shows.
Yeah, I think maybe it's because of influence. So obviously I'm from the UK, and I'd probably say I was quite big in the UK. And so I always approached the whole Amazon space of, I will learn it and then I'll hire someone to do it for me. And so that was a very big influence. Whereas I'd say in the US, that wasn't, it wasn't really a big thing. It was very much we grind. And by the way, you make amazing money in comparison to what the UK makes. The margins are amazing. So, relative to a job, you're making bank, which is amazing. But then no one's really talking about that skill set of hiring, and it's another whole level of challenges. And I think it's exposure. I'm guessing the question I kind of think about is when you first started in this business, who were the people you were following? None of them were exposing you to teams, hiring VAs. You knew of it, but it was always the one or the two. It was never I'm getting the hell out of this business and here's how I'm going to do it. But they all talked about, here's how I'm in a shop scanning icons and making money, which is really high viewership, but it's super boring for me and obviously for you. But the idea is I released some great videos and here's a 3-part video. It took an hour and a half of here's how we find a purchasing manager from our sources internal. Here's the recruitment process we go through for them. And then here's how we train them. And that was a 3-part video, half an hour each. I think that's 4 years ago. Till this day, it's got less than 1,000 views per video. So there just isn't the keyword search volume for it. People aren't really looking for it, but they are looking how to make money online, which is kind of also from a service provider perspective. So providing VAs is challenging because I really love helping people get out of the business and talking about that, all the nuances and managing people and getting a purchasing manager. And hey, how do you get your VA to spend $100,000 a week on your credit card without them stealing it and you trusting them? And that stuff's fun, but reviewing a deal, It's like, please, come on, there's like 10,000 videos out there you can watch. But I know that that's what people want to see. But yeah, it's difficult. So I think it's just exposure. I think that's why. And obviously because of my background prior to Amazon, I brought that to Amazon and exposed everyone.
That's a really good point that you bring up. And because as soon as you said that, that was exactly my experience. Like I think it was Watch Me Amazon was probably like one of the first things I saw. Actually, Reezy Resell was. And what was it? He was in a thrift store. He was scanning books, or he was at Home Depot or doing whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, I have to go in there. And then for Watch Me Amazon, it's like he has a warehouse. He has employees in state, right? And so it's like, oh, like that's the path. Like I've been doing this for 6 years. Like I wasn't really exposed to probably virtual assistants, probably like, I don't know, 2-3 years into it. And I kind of tried it, didn't. I was like, I could just do it myself or whatever. I kind of wish, like Drew said, like I systematized it. I did try a little, but like I just not as much. But I think you're right, because that's how it's kind of positioned. Like you go into the store, you go to Goodwill, you go to Marshall's, and it's not really like, hey, like you should learn this and then give it to someone else. That's very rare to hear.
Yeah. I think just on a side note, obviously we're young. I'm like 40 nearly. I know, scary, eh? But what I'd probably say is your entrepreneur journey will continue for many years into the future. And if that's what you believe, then what you realize is that whatever I do in the future, I'm probably going to need to learn the skill set of hiring, managing, and training and supporting great people. Now, I would kind of add on to that so that you don't need to have a big team of like 100 people, not at all. I think it's just being able to have a team of like 5, but just being able to have a team that you can directly manage, no more than 8, maybe like 5, and learning the skill set of doing that is going to be so powerful. So regardless of where you are in your business and what you're doing, I think just having the ability to know how to do that is, it's a form of leverage, and it will just change the game for you. Because we all know that in the game of Amazon, there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen, but only a very small part of it actually makes you money. And so if you can get rid of the rest, then you're really focusing on the money-making stuff. And the same thing will be applicable for all business models. And so if you're able to get rid of all that non-money-making activity and then just focus on the money-making activity, that's where you maximize your time and efficiency and use leverage.
Yep. I think another problem a little bit is the marketing of VAs, like aside from you, obviously, but like other people just kind of make it like it's a hack, like get a VA and it's just going to make your life better. It's like, it's not, you're getting an employee and you have to train them, right? That's like, it's difficult. Because I remember my first VA I ever got was from you guys. I got it from you guys and I was like, oh, this is going to be a magical moneymaker. And I'm just like, what? They don't just print me money out of the sky? It's like, no, man, you have to train them. Like you guys provide a ton of different background stuff, but it's like, they're not magic. You're not giving me like, you keep them if they made me $100,000 right off the bat. So I don't know. I guess I don't know why that the whole space kind of sees it that way, but I think they do a little bit, especially the new entrepreneurs. They just see VAs and they're like, oh, this is magic. And it's like, oh, it doesn't work. Whatever. I'm not going to try it again.
It's because they hear the stories. Like, no one, if you created short form content right now, and if we cut this up, the stuff which is going to get views is not going to be I've probably hired 1,000 VAs in my life, like directly for me going, we've had 88 VAs employed at one point in my HR software. Like we're on like employee number 201 at the moment. So if you think we've like hired people and fired them over the years. So talking about that whole journey of how many I've had to hire, try, train, that's super boring. But talking about hey man, yeah, I have a VA right now that makes me, spend per week on a bad week would be $5,000, on a good week would be like $20,000, and that VA cost me $500. That's going to get like, how dare you pay them $500 and they're making you so much money, you're a scammer. That's going to get the engagement. But then other people are going to see, wow, man, you pay $500 and you make $18,000 in spend. They're going, I'm struggling to spend $1,000 a week right now. I need to hire one of these $500 VAs to make it work. And you're like, you don't realize I've just gone through 1,000 VAs to find that one. And P.S., she does get a bonus scheme as well. But so they see that. And I'll share a good example, obviously, within us as a service. We had someone pay for us, got to the onboarding call and went through, didn't tell us, by the way. And then at week 6, they said, hey, Tom, I'm not very happy right now. My VA is not making me money. And we're like, we've been asking for your spend data and you're not giving it to us, but like we don't really know what's going on with your business. Like we're trying to help you, but you're not letting us in. Do you want to book a call? So I had a call and I was like, so what's the problem? And they said, well, my VA is not making me money. I was like, well, like talk me through, like what's your criteria, what's happening? And they go, well, it's not that.
If you're still listening to the podcast at this point, you are into it and a fan, and we really appreciate that. If you could do us a solid and like, subscribe, and do all that stuff, it really helps the podcast grow. And secondly, if you could tag us on Instagram, just take a picture of what part you are at the podcast. If you like it, tell us what you think about it. Tag me at Side Hustle Experiment, and I will definitely share it. Now let's get back to the podcast.
That my Amazon Seller Central account hasn't been approved by Amazon yet. I was like, fuck, you've hired a VA without even getting an account. Like, oh my God, like maybe on day one, the account opened, like maybe, but you haven't even got the account approved yet. And you've already hired it before you've even got the account. They're basically creating an LLC. They've got to go through lots of different things. And I'm like, and this is what we see in the market. They see all the social media, they see the money, and they kind of piece things together, but don't realize there's a lot of nuance in the middle that you've got to get it in the right way. And that's called hard work. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy story. But I'm sure stuff like that happens all the time. Even if they're not brand new, it's probably somebody that doesn't really know how to source themselves. Like you can't teach somebody something you don't know. It's just like any other business. I don't know why the misconception comes off like that for people, but just one of those things. But talking about the VA service, how's that going? Is it grown or is it down because the Amazon stuff's down, or how's that kind of looking for?
We're in the process of restructuring right now. So we don't, if anyone's looking, so they're not able to buy a VA at the moment, but we've done over 1,000, I think we've done 1,100 VAs over the last 5 years. So it's been really good.
Wow.
Like I'm really, really happy with it. But what we've seen, and again, coming back to that beginning, it's like, you've got lots of new sellers who see this as an answer and they just hire. And I'll kind of add this on a side note. If anyone is thinking about hiring a VA, the one thing you've got to understand is that unless you're paying for an expert, and by the way, an expert is someone who already proven themselves and they're well known, like you're going to hire Drew to do sourcing for you. Like that would be considered an expert, not someone who says they're an expert, someone who can actually prove it. Which, by the way, you're not going to find, and Drew isn't going to work for you for like less than $1,000 an hour, and it's not going to be cost effective. So any VA you hire is basically going to have to take their knowledge from you. So if you do not already know how to successfully source, hiring a VA is not going to solve that problem. And all you're doing is basically imparting what you do every day to them, so they go and do that for 40 hours a week. It's basically a form of leverage, and if you don't know how to use the leverage, you ain't going to get a result. That's the important thing. So for us, what we've seen is in FastTrack FBA, and what we're changing to is we were doing leads. We had a sheet which was API connected. We had VAs, and we were setting all those individual services. But the problem came was that people are kind of buying parts, and then they were complaining about it. And what it caused for us was just massive amounts of, again, people hiring a VA and don't even know how to analyze a deal. And so therefore, it's increasing our workload. So what we're changing to is one of, instead of mass hiring and mass doing this, is now really just getting a very few number of clients and working with them very specifically and working with them to grow their businesses. Cost increase as a result of what we do in the service. But what we see is that, again, when you look at beginner, intermediate, expert level, that beginner level are coming in and they're saying, right, I want the results that everyone else is talking about. How can I shortcut it? Oh, I need to buy this, thinking, it's like a plug and play option. And unfortunately, that doesn't work because A, the opportunity in Amazon is still there, but it's not as easy as it was. But B, also, so Amazon's more risky. Like, you need to be making sure that you're buying legit goods. You're doing the proper analysis. You're tracking all these things. And this just takes a lot of learning, which unfortunately a lot of people don't want to do. But Amazon at the end of the day is a real business. And if you don't treat it like that, you'll get shut down really quick and you'll lose a lot of money. So for us in FastTrack FBA, we're restructuring to go from like mass hiring loads of different products to really focusing it down and supporting just a few sellers on a kind of cohort basis. Make sense?
Yep. And make it higher ticket. So
correct.
Yeah. That's so crazy. We just had Carter Maxwell on, and after the pod, I told him he was talking about like where he's going to go with it. I was like, dude, you need to do what you just said. I was like, that's the future, because why? Also, when you're selling something for $1,000 or whatever the service is, your client's just worse. So I guarantee you've seen this. Probably the people that buy the least amount of VAs want to replace them more than the people that are like, here's $5,000, just give me what I need, and then they just don't even talk to you. Then somebody's like, hey man, I need a refund on this. I need 3 more VAs, all this type of stuff. So you focus on the guys, trying to charge maybe 5 figures or more. It's probably a lot easier to work with, and you make more money. It's easier all around for everybody.
Yeah. And that's what we want. And like at the end of the day, we want to help people, and you can't help everyone, and you've got to do it in a way which is profitable, because if you can't do it properly, the business isn't going to survive. and also you've got to do it in a way like, hey man, I only have one life and I want to enjoy this life. And the last thing I want to be doing is dealing with 1,000 support tickets where it's like, and also on the flip side is my Amazon business is doing well. I don't work much in it. And yes, I do need to fill this time in the rest of the week, but I don't want to fill it time with problems. Like I want to enjoy the time we have. And so working with a few people closely can be really beneficial to watch that growth. Whereas if it's constant firefighting, you're like, open the account before you hire the VA, for example.
Yep. What do you got, John?
So I guess going on that, you said before, I could tell you like Hormozy, and he's like very big on like hiring the best types of people. You said your team is much smaller now. Do you think that's because you hired better people and they could do more and you need less people, or you're just kind of downsized and kind of reconfigured everything?
I think so. At my peak, we ran the UK doing $4 million in a year, £3.6 million. We did 1.5 in the US, and we had like FastTrack FBA was like doing well. I think we were like $750,000 a year in sales in FastTrack FBA, so it's doing pretty well. And we had 88 VAs full time, all working for me. And what we were basically, this is at the time before I shut down the UK. And the one thing that I note, like the UK margin went from like 10% 1 year, 7%, 5%, 3%. I was like, I know where this is fucking going. I need to get out of here. This is going to be a disaster. Pardon language. So
you can cuss on here. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So thank you. So the idea was like, I knew that business was shutting down, and that was a horrible time. I mean, like, oh my God, like I'm this guy who's on social media and I'm sharing about how to sell on Amazon, and I'm selling a service to Amazon sellers, which is going to help grow the business. And guess what? My business has failed. I'm shutting it down. Like ego, everything is just killed right now. And it was a horrible time. But on that journey, the reflection was about like, what do you want? Where are you going? And also like, how are you getting there? And again, Alex or Mosey's talked about this millions of times, is like, we can do a lot of work. We can work really fucking hard, run around, do a lot of stuff and actually get nowhere. And so the question kind of came was like, what stuff really makes a difference? And why can't we just make it? And generally, when you're closing stuff down, really the answer is you want to simplify. Simple, 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 simple. So when we looked at even like the Amazon, so the UK business, we shut that whole thing down. That was a lot of staff, like 30 staff disappeared in that. And then in the US business, we had 10 staff, I think it was. Way too many, by the way. Never recommend that many. We do the same amount of revenue now with 5 staff that we did with 10. And what we basically just did was like, okay, let's look at all our VAs and let's look at what they're working on. Let's look at their, and let's start really getting into the numbers. So we look at things like, to this day, we're really on top of it. So you get leading and lagging indicators. So leading indicators are estimated gross profit they're going to generate, spend per week, what's the average unit size, what's the margin they're looking at, all of these things. And then we look at those same numbers again once the products sell. And that's really important because we can actually see the performance of the VA and how they're working. And then also we see that correlating to what kind of products they're buying and suppliers they're working from in niches. And so what we really did was basically just said, look, all people have good days and bad days, but we basically started to notice that some of the VAs did amazing and some of them just weren't really performing. So we're like, we either say you get up to here or you get gone, because really at the end of the day, you're just adding more administration to our team and it's not worth it. So we just condensed it down. And I think the final part was that we had a purchasing assistant. My purchasing manager left. He went to go work for his brother in business in Australia, and he's Filipino. And my purchasing assistant came in. I spent 6 months solid just really retraining her. And like from that point onwards, I raised her standard to like a level that I've never seen before in any of my purchases. She was really, really on point about due diligence, checking every deal, like very high standards. But then that filtered down to all the staff. And then I could use my leadership skills in regards to just talking to her, saying like, look, at the end of the day, if you tell someone to do something and they do it and then go back to the old way, you're going to be fighting a fight forever. So just get rid of them. And again, like I imparted all the knowledge of 20 years with her, and I asked her great questions. And then eventually we just trimmed down to the team we've got right now. And like, they're amazing. Like it's a really nice atmosphere. They work really hard. My purchasing manager will regularly be into like 1 or maybe 3 o'clock in the morning. And by the way, that's her choice, not mine. She likes to work late. She's just had a kid. And even like one day she was in hospital. I didn't know. I was like, how was your weekend? She's like, oh, like my son who's like 4 months old was sick. And I was like, but I saw you share the report and you spent all the money. She's like, yeah, I took the laptop into hospital and we carried on purchasing while I was in the hospital with him. I was like, what the fuck? Like, you can like take time off. Don't worry about it. She's like, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, I wanted to get it spent. And I was like, okay, fine. So they also like they like the flexibility, the bonuses they make, and also it's a good working environment. So it's just been a long journey of, at a fundamental level, raising your standards, tracking the shit out of everything, and just really asking great questions about how can we improve this business to get better. And I could go forever about all the metrics we track, which makes a really big difference to what we do.
I want you to speak a little bit about the ego stuff you were talking about, because I'm sure that was hard of like when all that stuff came together. So when did that happen? Like what year did that happen, and how did you? I don't know what kind of went on with you. How'd you get through that kind of thing? Because I think that's probably relatable to a lot of people, maybe on a smaller level, obviously, but everybody thinks the worst thing ever has happened to them all the time. So kind of talk through how you got out of that.
Oh, so I think it caused like a massive. Basically, I broke up with my girlfriend afterwards, so I think it caused a lot of stress in that and showed a lot of problems. But fundamental level, I was probably one of the biggest YouTubers for Amazon in the UK, I'd say. And obviously very well known, and we were starting into the US market, which was great. And obviously I'm probably one of the biggest public resellers, especially doing OA in the UK marketplace as well. And if you want to know, in the UK, you can basically find anyone's Amazon store in like 5 minutes. It's not very hard. So I'm on YouTube talking about how great Amazon is, and then people can just go find my store in 10 seconds. And then everyone's copying me. And the problem was that obviously the margin's declining, and it got to a point whereby we're like, this is going to be in a really bad place. Like, I think we took a loan out with Amazon for like £360,000 because I basically took a lot of the money out to move it over to the US. The US had better margins, and we were continuing to run the UK business on lending. And the loan itself had about a £50,000 interest on it. So like, not cheap. And at the end of the year, I'd done like, let's call it 3 million or something. It was the year before. And I was going to walk away with the P&L was looking like, you're going to make like 60, 70,000. And you're like, okay, cool. 100,000 US. You're like, based on the revenue, it's rubbish. And then my accountants come back and say, you haven't factored in that interest for the loan that you took. And so we went from like 60, 70 to like 10. And I was like, fuck. And I was like, man, if this is going down, I thought I can deal with like 5%, maybe even like 3% margins. Like, we just be careful what we do. I was like, we're going to 0. And I was like, I need to get out of this place. And so for me, like, I remember it quite vividly. It was a horrible time. So I think it was like we got that on maybe like during like a Wednesday or Thursday. And then over the course of the weekend, I discussed a lot about it with a lot of people I know. And I kind of said, look, this needs to go. And again, it's kind of like, I don't want it to shut down because A, the staff I've employed, and then B, I have another company which relies on my reputation. And then also as well is that I'm also promoting this business model, which I'm failing at, which is like one kick in the teeth. But I recognize that there was a lot of internal resistance. And I said, if I was being external to myself, what would be the advice I would give myself? And the advice would be, you need to get the hell out of there because you're about to lose a lot of money if you continue doing this. And so, and again, I'm quite good at that. I'm quite good at stepping outside of myself and saying, what's the advice you give yourself? And then be like, I don't like it, but I have to do it. So, and then I remember the situation was like, on the weekend, I said, I need to do this. So on Monday, I basically did all the meetings as normal. And then on Monday night, which is Tuesday for the Philippines, I basically lined up the meetings. So every like 30 seconds, or like 30 minutes, sorry, it was like call with the top manager to explain the situation, then call with the purchasing assistants, then call with all the staff. And by the way, I had to book it in advance because if you don't book it in advance, they don't get it. So I had to kind of make up a fake excuse like, hey, we're just going to talk about the structure of the business, where we're going, new bonus scheme or something. But also you can't make them scared because they're scared things go wrong. So basically what happened was that I literally called up the manager and said, look, this is the story. The story is right now we're losing money, or we're about to lose a shit ton of money if we continue doing this. This business is not viable. I need to get the hell out of here. So, And then the problem came was, so then it was like, I'm sorry, but I can't give you another job. I can't take you anywhere else. I need to let this go. And then the next part was like, but going forward, I would like to retain 3 of the staff for the lead service. So you need to tell me right now who are the staff you'd like to keep. And they're like, can I let you know tomorrow? I was like, no, you have about 5 minutes. Because in the next call, I'm going to tell them who they are, or I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to go and speak to them privately and say that in the following call, when we speak to everyone, everything that I tell them is true, apart from the fact they're losing their job. They're keeping on. And so they literally had to do it. And unfortunately, I've fired so many people so many times. And I've literally, you don't ever beat around the bush. You don't do it. You just start the call and go, Drew, I'm really sorry you're not going to like this, but as of right now, you're going to be losing your job.
That hurts, even just right now.
And the reason why you have to jump straight in is because if there's any ambiguity, they start going like, what's going on? And you need to be like, I'm really sorry, I do not want to do it, but you are losing your job. And they just give them a quick moment and go, I'll explain why in a second, but I just want to make sure that you're very crystal clear. Unfortunately, as of this date, you will no longer be employed in the company. And then we go through the why. What a lot of people do is like, here's the whole story. And during the story, the person's thinking that, am I losing my job? What's going on? And they can't really listen. Whereas if you can say, look, straight away, I'm really sorry, you are losing your job. Here's why. Then they can like say, okay, let me understand what's going on. And then we ask questions. But a lot of people are just in shock. And it's horrible. So then that was that. So I had to let everyone know. And we did about 7 days. And then after that, during those 7 days, I wrote out a post I posted into my social media profile, which is in my private Facebook group. So this is in FastTrack FBA's Facebook group. And I basically listed the 12 key reasons of why, like what happened to the business and why we're closing down. Because I know that if I did not share it publicly, having 30 staff who are now on the market, people would just be like, what's going on? And then stuff. So like, I had to get ahead of it. And that was hard. And also, so you've got to do it in a way whereby it's like, it's really difficult because you're not saying like, I'm failing and then the business is horrible and like, you can't buy from my business. But it's like, that was horrible. So again, I had to like position it in a way, and that's communication skills, which is challenging. And then the final part after that, and the one kind of realization, and I'll say it took me about a year to really get over it. But the one part of realization which I really came to was that if you look at anyone successful, they have all failed so many times. So you just have to realize to yourself that failure is part of success. And if you have not failed, you have not tried. And so I'm like, this is just part of the pain and horrible thing that I have to go through. And I hate it. I never enjoyed it. And letting the people go, done a lot of time and work for me, I did not enjoy. But I'm appreciative and grateful for the journey that I've been through and the opportunity that I had and what we did and provided for a lot of people. And also the lessons that I've learned. And I've taken a lot of them on forward, which is about people are amazing. Just managing shitloads of people is a real nightmare. And so keep it small teams, very high performance, very well incentivized and very well targeted and monitored. And I'm not saying like we're micromanaging, but we have very clear incentives and tracking. And then you have a really good time and makes your life so much easier. But again, we all fail at some point. It's just part of business, but it just effing hurts.
Yeah, it's rough. Did you notice, you say you like are pretty good outside of yourself. Did you notice that was going on? Like, did you notice that you were learning lessons, or were you like, no, the world's ending, this is really bad? Like, or how much of a panic were you in, or was it more you knew that it was going to be okay on the other end of it? Because I think people struggle with that as well.
So I'll give you again, I talked about my relationship. I'll give you 2 things. One, I was in my girlfriend's house at the time, and this is kind of like caused us like a rift. Like, her parents were out. We'd woke up in the morning. I went for a shower and I came back and I was just crying, like sat on the end of the bed crying my eyes out. And my girlfriend was like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And it was like fucking tough. And I basically said to her, I don't want to be here in the house. I don't want to be with you. And I don't want to be in this life. Like, I was like, I don't want to be alive right now. Like, I fucking feel so bad. I'm about to fire all these staff. I'm about to lose a business. I'm about to lose my ego, like my sense of who I am, my value that I brought myself up on. My other business is going to be affected from this. It's going to be hard. My reputation publicly is going to be affected. And it was a horrible place, absolutely horrible. And for me, that was like, I had a mini breakdown at that point. Like, I was like, there's so much on the line. And what's really interesting is like, the lesson I learned from that is we put so much pressure on ourselves when we build us up. Like, your social media following, your success and everything, and like, that is not you. you are not your business. You are not the subscriber count or anything. They are just numbers. And so I'm always reminded of that. And I'm always like, hey, don't get big headed. Just try and like keep yourself with like, you are not that and that is not you. And I think that's really interesting. And there's another thing I was going to say. Yeah. And then the skill set to come out of it was at that time, like, and I went through a number of days when it was horrible, very, very dark. Like I just did not want to be here, do anything at all. But in my kind of mind, I always knew, and I always said this to myself, in 20, 30 years time, you're going to look back on this and just go, that was shit, but you learned so much from it. And that was like the one thing that really dragged me forward. That it's kind of like when you're in a marathon. I've never run a marathon, but what I've heard is like doing the marathon is like you get to like mile 10 or something and you're like, oh, I just can't go any further. And they go, stop thinking about the end, just do one foot in front of the other. And if you keep doing that, you'll get there. And so my thing was like, stop worrying about all this stuff. In 20 years, it not going to matter. Just do the next thing on your jobs list. That's it. And at that time, I started working out a lot more. I started like focusing on things and like building those habits which are more important. And that's really served me. And I try to continue that to this day, building good habits. And also as well, just trying to, like on the side note, I learned salsa. I'm doing Spanish right now. I've done salsa for 3 years in Mexico. I don't speak Spanish. And so it's really hard. And I do that to keep kind of bringing myself down. So like, like you're shit. And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. Because you don't want to keep building yourself up again because it's a dangerous place to be. Make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I heard someone say this once about like the depression really is just a lack of identity and routine, which is like exactly, you're like, I got to get a routine. I've lost this identity. But that it's not your identity. You just kind of made that up yourself and then you crashed it yourself and now you're freaking out about it. Yeah, man. I mean, I went through a similar thing the last like year and a half after I've quit Amazon. I've had some times where I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And I'm like, I got to realize that this is just part of it. Like everybody goes through this. And once you've built stuff up, you're like, I'll never fail. And then when you do, you're like, whoa, I'm just like everybody else. That's just how it goes. So appreciate you sharing that story. I think people find that very relatable, especially like people watch this podcast.
Yeah. It's like, I'll say it's like, everyone will go through it. It's a horrible thing to go through. Like if you really try, you will fail and you will go through it and it will feel like it's the end of days. It's the end of everything. But the fundamental level is that in 20 years, you'll look back on it and you'll laugh. And also as well, hopefully you've learned from it and not made a mistake. But if you never fail, you have not tried. And so therefore it's like, as part of what we do, you have to expect that. You have to expect those days where you are going to sit on the end of the bed and cry because that's just part of the parcel of the life we decide to live, which is part of it.
We got Joe.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but what did she say when you said that? And did you kind of have a plan in place? You're like, all right, I'm going to like get an apartment or like what was kind of going through your head?
Interesting. Like, again, this is my relationship. She went off crying. And because she heard, I do not want to be in this relationship, which, I really understand. Like, I understand that, your boyfriend is telling you do not want to be in this relationship. Like, it's really hard. And I really, I respect that. I understand her point as well. I had a concern where it was like, for me, I needed someone at that point. And what I saw was that it was really hard to talk about the struggles that I was going through. And what's interesting is having spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs since, they told me like, I don't think my other half could handle that as well. Like everything. And I kind of obviously have spoken in a lot more detail. And I think it's hard. I think it's hard about the partners we choose in life and what we do. And also the game that we play, like I talk about money, in our world, we talk about millions of dollars and, millions of dollars in Mexico is like lifetimes worth of money. And it's just different leagues. And a lot of people like struggle to understand that. And why we sit there and say like, hey, I want someone to be in my life who I can share this world with, because obviously we want to like provide to our families. But sometimes they don't understand the struggles that we're going through. And so I think at the time I was very frustrated by that, the fact that my partner wasn't there for me. But on reflection, I think it was probably not fair of me to request that of her, where she's never been in this life, doesn't understand it, and that those things are, that's like what I needed of her at that time. Like, it's tough. It's really, really tough. There's no right or wrong. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, what do you expect in the future out of that stuff? If somebody's going through that right now of like, I don't know, because I think that's probably a more common situation. It's like, there's just a lack of, like you said, the million things, like, dude, you tell somebody you have $1 million, they just think you're the richest person in the world. That's just like, whatever. It's just hard to even conceptualize that. It's like, I don't know. I find that difficult as well. But what do you about in the future? Do you think that, will you even talk about that stuff? Do you expect to talk about it? Because the way I handle it is I'm just like, I'm stressed out all the time. So sometimes I'll just like, I've got to try not to talk about it because I'm just like, it's going to be bad for both of us usually.
I think like, again, it's like, who is your partner? What do you want them to be in your life? And by the way, like, okay, on a side note, when we think about relationships, one of the biggest misconceptions we have, or I believe we have right now around relationships in the modern world, is we expect our partner to be everything. And that's unfair. You cannot expect them to be your best friend, the best sexual partner in the world, amazing salsa dancer. They know all your friends really well, and they're like really in touch with like your emotions, and they're a man, for example, or the other way around, sort of thing. But the idea is like, you've got to define like, what do I want from them? So for me, it was kind of like, I probably saw that in that relationship. Like, I want you to be a lot of things to me. And I think we all know, like, when you try and talk about your business to your family just don't get it. And I don't think it's fair to ask your partner, if they don't understand the game that you play, the struggles you're going through, which is interesting. But on the flip side, when we meet other entrepreneurs, when we do videos like these, they're the most engaging thing ever because we never get to talk about it. Yeah. And so and Drew, I really get you, because my God, when I don't speak to someone for a while and I'm like in grind mode for a couple of days, I come out and I might go on a date or something and I'm talking to this girl about all this business stuff. And she's like, you're fucking intense. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I have not spoken to people about it. But then on the other side is like, obviously after this, I'll be like, cool, I'm super chill. I don't need to talk about my business. So again, as entrepreneurs, we need to get that out of our system. And I think that's really important. And we need to learn how to manage that, and whether that be with our staff, with our partners, but really the people around us. And that's about choosing your friends and building, habits and people around you which really support you in getting you where you want to be.
Yeah. It's hard too. It's a hard balance. That's funny you talk about the date thing. But I used to go on a bunch of dates that the girls would be like, you just never shut the fuck up. I'm like, I can't. I don't talk to anybody and I have to tell people this information. Like, I'm learning so much stuff, but now I'm just like, I try not to talk about it at all because it just stresses me out that people don't want to listen or whatever. So it's just better just to get it out on things like this. We do this pod now all the time. So it's really easy, good outlet for it, but I definitely, I relate.
Get a VA and talk to them.
that's a good idea.
I literally am like, right, I got a problem. Like a top tip, I always say it to people with VAs. I'm like, if you got a problem, you basically just need to have more frequency of contact with your staff. And so any problem I have basically means, right, I just meet you more. And I was like, if you never see me, everything's fine. And so, like, and obviously when everything's right, you don't really have anything to talk about. You just have like, hey, I have some great numbers. Look at my profits. Look at my revenue. And I have a weekly meeting with my purchasing manager, and we just go, fucking smashed it last week. Well done. But if we have problems, oh my God, I'm on calls twice a day. It doesn't matter. No. Like that's, and again, that's a really good out, which is very helpful.
This is a bit off topic, but I have been wanting to ask you this question. I'd ask other people, but I know that you do all the background stuff on the VAs. You put them through a lot of tests, right? Like tons of them from what I remember. What is there like a commonality that you've seen throughout this that's like, this is going to be a great VA? Because some are college educated. They do IQ tests, right? So you know what their literal IQ is. There's got to be something throughout all this data that you're like, okay, this is a good metric for success.
There's really like two things. I'll tell you a couple of points. We actually found that college educated students weren't the best. It's non-college educated. So we had a HR manager who was the ex-HR business partner for Pepsi Cola, 5,000 people in the Philippines. She was managing them all. That was her role. And she introduced a lot of stuff, but she was very big on hiring from universities and top universities in the Philippines. And when we did like the kind of analytics across all of those candidates, didn't work. Also, we don't know exactly why. I suspect it's because they probably felt this was not where they wanted their career to go. The idea is it's a very manual copy paste job. It can be it is mind-numbingly boring unless you're really interested in it. And if you're, you can find someone right now with like a master's in engineering who will take your job because the rate of pay that you're offering is way more than what they would get. But the problem comes is that, and again, whenever you hire, it's not about the job right now. It's about where you're going in your life and how this job helps you. Because if it isn't going to help you, you ain't going to last. Like, you're going to quit because you're disconnected. So that was one thing that we noticed. And then I don't know the exact numbers because I left it very much to my operations team. But the recruitment process is a 4-stage process, which was stage 1, which is what's your salary you're looking for, what's your availability to work, and there's like 2 other questions. So really basic. And it'd be amazing the amount of people you'd say, the job is 25,000. How much money would you like? 35. And they're like, oh, didn't get the job. It's like, I'm telling you how much it is. And you're not even telling me you want that thing. So that was interesting. So we said no. So we did basic questions. Then we did a motivation to work assessment. And this was actually taken from Pepsi Cola. So it was a series of like 50 questions, multiple choice. You could complete it in about 8 minutes, 10 minutes. But what that really had a big impact, like we saw the correlation dramatically on those who scored high on that and lasting with our clients, and those who scored low on it and didn't last with our clients. And really, you're just trying to assess their motivation to work. Like, are they motivated to do this job? And I don't know the exact questions off the top of my head, but it was a really interesting thing. We filtered so many out through that. And then the other one we did was, which made a really big difference. We actually we created a custom shop, like a Shopify store, and we had like 10 products in there. And then we knew the same products in Amazon. And we basically had take these 10 products, find the same product in Amazon, and then use the revenue calculator to work out the profit and margin. So really, can you match products? And because we knew the ASINs, and we kind of got some of them where they were like obvious, and some of them were like there's a slight nuance difference, or ones where it's like there are 3 versions of it, and could they pick it up? So can you match products? Can you use a calculator tool? And then this is 10 products, and it's like, could you do it in half an hour? And the amount of people who would fail at that would be incredible. So it's like you had 3 minutes per product, and it's literally like right mouse click search, Google, Amazon. And that filtered out a lot. So there it was kind of like, could you do the job? And then could you do the process that we're looking for? And then if you could and then I'll tell you some stats, which are quite interesting. On average, we would take between 30 to 50 candidates through to training from that every week. And then we would do effectively 2 weeks worth of training. Now, out of those 30 to 50 candidates, you'd probably get maybe 12, if you're lucky, who complete the 2 weeks. You'd probably find at least half of them would quit, just not bothered, not doing it. And it's intense. It was like 8 hours a day, but it was like training, Q&A sessions, one-to-one over the shoulder and everything. But they're learning a skill which would take them where they need to be. And we pretty much said you're guaranteed to get a job afterwards with our clients. But it was just amazing how many quit or even like just didn't show up or anything. So, and again, I think I've had conversations with clients and I said, look, they're like, oh, I'm thinking, why should I hire from you? Why should I do myself? And I'm like, I don't think you actually realize how much work it is to hire. And then once you've hired, then to train, and then they'll probably quit. And then you've got to do it all again. And the biggest problem we see with our clients, and again, we did the 12-week replacement period, was that you might have a good VA, but you might not get it right. You might start them off wrong. And then you're like, you should really just get a new VA. But if you've done it yourself, you've sunk so much time into it, like weeks. You're like, I don't want to. But you don't realize you're now going to affect the next 5 years of your business. And again, we look at metrics. So again, I come back to, a good VA of mine, bad week is $5,000 spend in a week. A good week can be $30,000 spend, which is incredible. But like, what if I told you, if I told you that and you're like, after 2 years of my VA, I'm still only getting 2,000 spend a week. You'd be like, how much have you just missed out on by having a bad VA? It's like change your business. So I can't go too much into detail because I don't know the specifics, but I hope that kind of gives you a bit of an insight.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about the breakdown of like men, women, and age? Is there any like you hire more women, you hire more men, old, young?
No, I'd generally say it's generally more of a younger crowd. Like we didn't see like just looking through the people, but at any one time we'd have so many VAs under aftercare management. Like we never looked at those statistics. And then also, so you had clients who had weird things like I want a woman under the age of 25 with no children. And they've got to be living, at home not with their parents or something. And I was like, we have to kind of like, why? Like, sure, you just want the one who finds you the best deals. And then you find that they watched a video somewhere where someone said this and now they want that. And I'm like, I get why, but like, just get the person who gets you great results. That's the only one that matters.
Yeah, that's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah.
What do you got, John?
What are some of the biggest mistakes people make with VAs that you've seen, and how could they avoid them?
I'll say it now, is not doing the upfront work. There's a great thing that I love from the guy who does SEO, Neil Patel. He said, I can't work with you until I've worked with you. And so doing trials, like paying people to do trials, like, hey, I'm going to trust you for a week or 2 weeks, and paying for it. Like, people are like, man, that's going to cost me a lot of money to test 5 people. I'm like, I don't think it's good. You realize how much it's going to cost you if you don't do it, if you get it wrong. Like, hiring people so hard. Just doing the upfront work on recruitment, really, like, people are like, oh man, I've got to do recruitment. Oh, I'll put an online jobs up, or someone from Facebook group messaged me, or in this Discord I messaged me, that'll do. I'm like, it's probably some of the worst stuff you can do. Like, you really want to get out there, find as many people. You want to be like, if I was doing it myself, I'd be asking the question, how can I get the best possible VAs? So then I'd be asking the question about like, okay, well, where are the best possible VAs right now? They might be some of the big sellers. Hey, Drew, have you got a VA, mate? Obviously, I know you're not going to offer me your VA, but can I ask you, if your VA's got a friend who they recommend to come work with me, I'll pay them $500 as a bonus fee. Like, just because your VA will know someone who's like good, and then be like, and I'll pay them, maybe it's like I'll pay them $250 up front now and $250 after 12 weeks if they succeed. Structure the bonus scheme, something like that. But like, don't be afraid to do that and to get the opportunity. But you've got to spend so much time trying to find the areas where the best candidates spend, and then you can start filtering from there. But the problem we find, most people will just like go, oh yeah, that'll do, and then your talent pool is just rubbish. And it's like, yeah, the best of the worst. You're going to be set up for failure. And I think the other one, which I would like definitely say, not so much about hiring. I always do 3 months probation, so no bonuses, no pay rises, nothing in the first 3 months. We won't even discuss it. After that, we'll introduce it. And generally, we don't do pay rises. I do pay rises annually at the rate of inflation, but we do really big bonuses. So it's always performance-related pay. If you make my company money as measured by net gross profit of your deals that you found, I will give you a percentage of that. Great. Because now I win when you win when I win. That's the thing. Not like spend or anything. It's got to be actual profit generated. And then the final one, which I strongly recommend, is time tracking, screenshots and everything. I've had great VAs who've done amazing results for me. Then all of a sudden, they've just gone downhill. And at the time, we didn't have time tracking. But after a while, we figured out what happened. And if I had time tracking, I would have solved it. And I've seen many clients of mine, great VAs, but what they realize is that VA is not even really working, or like there's problems with it. And time tracking, just like screenshots, time tracking just really helps it out. That's such a useful tool. And it's kind of like when you work in an office, your boss watches when you come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. And your boss knows when you go for lunch, when you come back from lunch, and he notices, he walks past you and looks at your screen and says, hey, what's going on? Like, it happens in reality, and there's a reason why. And to not do it like in what we do, I just think all it takes is one time when your VA is like, hey, I'm struggling right now. Maybe I'll just sell some of these deals to someone else to make some extra money. And then all of a sudden, you've now built a habit. Whereas the time tracking would just be like, I can't because Sir will catch me. And so therefore I can't do it. And I think it's just kind of a deterrent more than anything else.
It's really funny that you said with the Discord, like I get messages pretty much every day on Instagram saying, oh, like we'll help your Amazon store. And like, I'll always remember, and this is why I don't do it. Every once and again, they'll be like, oh, here are the types of leads I found. And it's some seller's spreadsheet of like 1,000 leads. And I'm just like, wow, like, yeah, so you're going to do that to me in like 3 months? Like, I don't think so, which is really funny. Going back to the time tracking, are you using a software, or how do you kind of go about that?
Team Logger, it costs $1 per VA per month. That's it. Super cheap, super simple, and it does both screens. And you can, if you upgrade to extra 50 cents, you can get screenshots every 2 minutes rather than every 30 minutes. So It's the best, and it's made by an Indian company, and they're like really cheap and they're really responsive on support. So definitely recommend it.
I'm curious your thoughts on, the future of this VA stuff in like the US and, bigger, even the UK as well. Do you think that the growth of these VAs are going to kind of decimate these economies of people that have jobs that, how much of the economy is just fluff jobs that are like worthless? When are like boomers going to figure out that they can hire VAs for way less and get more production out of these people? Do you think that that's going to happen anytime soon?
I don't think that will be it. Like that won't be it. Like I don't think boomers realizing they can replace like American jobs with VAs will be the answer, because that's been around for years. What will happen is it'll be AI replacing it. And so the way I think about it like this is that out of 100 million people in the Philippines, yeah, there's going to be bad ones, just like in the UK and US. But there are a proportion of them who are really high performing, who really want to do a good day's job. And so your job is to find those people and then to match them with AI tools and what you do. It's kind of like right now, it's like, we all use SellerAmp for sourcing, for example. If you had an army of VAs and they're all doing it manually with Amazon Revenue Calculator, but you just had a few good ones with SellerAmp, you would just blast them because you're so much quicker in doing analysis and much better. So it's easy to hire VAs. Like that's the thing, but anyone can hire staff. But hiring good staff and managing them well is really what you want to be. And again, I think I'll come back to Naval. He was like, there are 4 forms of leverage: code, media, networks, and labor. Labor being people like VAs, for example. And he's like, labor is the worst form. People have emotions, they have problems, sick days, you've got to keep them happy. But if you want to be truly rich, you've got to learn how to manage or control that form of leverage or manage that form of leverage. And so I always think VAs will be around because they're very efficient and very effective, and especially there's a lot of advantages to them. But I don't think it will ever really blow up. But I think if you can learn how to take maybe good VAs, whether they be in the Philippines or in the US or UK, it doesn't matter, but then combine that with very powerful tools in a very small, nuanced team, and very focused, you can just go off, rocket ship to the moon because you're nimble, fast, and very adaptable. And that's the thing that will just take you to where you need to be. And I think there are so many businesses that you can just do right now with that kind of model, like no more than 5 staff, very leveraged with software and a small, high-performing team. You make millions with not much work.
Yeah, small teams and huge companies. Yeah. Right. So you don't think these existing companies will necessarily grow by this, but you think new companies will emerge that have these aspects. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, because it is. How would they even learn how to do that stuff? That is kind of a big learning gap.
But it'll be like people like I say, not to try and like blow our own trumpet. It'll be like people like you and me, where we hear about other people doing something, and then maybe you've learned about VAs in Amazon, and now John's learned I'm learning, and then Drew, you've learned about AI somewhere else, and then John also knows about how to do Amazon, the picture one, I think it is, where you like the videos, and then all of a sudden the 3 of us come together and go, wow, like you can, John's like, hey, here's what I do, and then Drew says, you can use AI for that, and here's how I do it, and then I go, guys, you get a VA to do all of that for you, and you're like, fuck, that means I can hire like 10 VAs or 5 VAs, get them to use the AI tools that you're talking about, and get John's to do it. You're like, man, we could churn out like 10,000 videos a day. Like, this is insane. And like, how much is it going to cost us? $1,000 a day. I was like, would you make $1,000 if you had 10,000 videos? John would be like, man, you'd make $10,000. You're like, wow, cool, let's just go. That would be what it is, because you understand forms of leverage. I think that's the important point.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good way to put it as well. What do you got, Jonathan? Or go ahead.
I think the one thing I'll kind of add on to that, and if you kind of take away from what I'm talking about, is you want to learn skills which give you leverage. So again, I talked about at the very beginning, if you've never learned how to manage staff, you really want to learn how to run at least a team of 5 small people. Because when you figure out how to do something, you can now use that form of leverage to help you do some of it. And if you know how to do AI, for example, or use ChatGPT, it's another form of leverage, or like code, or how to release a podcast. It's another form of leverage. And all these things, or find someone who knows that form of leverage and then start working together, and all of a sudden, that's how you all just shoot off and just make exponential gross profit margins.
Awesome.
Wow. I know we got to get going here, but one last question. It's more of a selfish question. Our kind of goal for this podcast eventually is to basically just show up, talk to you, and then everything else gets taken care of. The clips getting uploaded and all that stuff. And like, we're not far from that, but like kind of far from that. For something like that, is that like one person? Is that a team of people? Like, and how would we find the best person to do that?
So the question I would ask you is, what's your goal with the podcast first? And I'm guessing there needs to be a money element in that, because obviously you know, if your goal was just to have reach, that's great, but your ability to grow that reach is going to be very limited with leverage, because you can't afford to pay for it unless you're paying for it firm. You know, you'd want it to self-sustain and even grow. So can I answer that?
Yeah, to make money eventually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the goal is to maybe start a Patreon, and then once we can kind of afford the VA, and then we have some other stuff that we're thinking about doing. But
yeah, so by the way, it's a really interesting question, because it's something that I'm really trying to dive into as we speak right now. So I'll kind of talk about high level, and again, so very simplistically, you want to think about the business model. So really you want to think about, how do I make money? So fundamental level is, you have obviously a podcast, you're going to get monetization from YouTube. That's rubbish, but it helps. So you probably want to sell something which you're referring to, or like doing, or even affiliate. You can do affiliate, but if you can sell something, info products, that's the great way right now. Generally, you might do low ticket, whereas there's no delivery cost. It's kind of like info rather than anything else, and you just drive revenue, drive people towards that. So that's your kind of like, we have a platform, we talk about something, and in that we drive people towards something. So then what your key kind of metrics are, or the key kind of things to think about are, you've got views on the video. Now, views are defined as as the topic you're talking about, which is hopefully going to be trending, or a really high long, or like something which you can do well in, like long tail, which will work. So trending or long tail that has high viewer count. Number two, then you want to make sure your click-through rate is great. So that's thumbnail. And then number three, you want to make sure that your first 30 seconds are incredible, because that's a really important part to keep retention. And then number four is, what you want to make sure is that in the video at the right times and frequently enough, that you are doing the frequency to the next part, you know, the what you want them to buy. And then if you think prior to that is about research, about thumbnails, or research around topics which work, thumbnails, and then also as well, because you're doing a podcast, it's like, the person I'm interviewing, do they have a big platform? For example, if you've got Barack Obama on here, Donald Trump, you know, Elon Musk, just by having them on here would go bang. So again, who are you interviewing? What's the reach of them? And then the final one, the final kind of consideration, I'd keep that really, really simple. And then the final consideration I would look at, and again, this is like the leverage part. So you've got part of like reaching out to people, which is a VA, maybe doing research on topics. A VA could help you with that, or shortlisting ideas. And then once the recording's done, you have another VA who are doing editing. By the way, you can use outsourcing service for all of these initially. You don't have to have an internal VA. They can do it all. They can edit it. They can upload it to YouTube. They can do it. You probably want to do some kind of email, so whereby you send an email out to your subscribers. Like, we have 27,000 subscribers, so we can email them every time when we say, hey, we've got a new video. That's super helpful, because again, you just blast. And then the final kind of like, so that's network leverage, VAs for labor leverage. And then the final bit you really want to think about is, there's a money capital leverage game you can play as well, is if the video does well, as defined by not so much viewership, but really click through. But maybe you're not ranking on the keyword. So say, for example, the keyword you're going after is like how to manage VAs for this interview. So you might type it in and go, you don't show up in the top 3. You're like, fuck, we're like 24. But what you notice is that of the 200 people watch the video, 50 of them bought your product. You're like, this has a very high conversion. What I would then do is go back and run paid ads inside YouTube search terms to get that video ranking higher. So that more people are searching for it. I'm just going to pay people to hit that keyword, because I know that once they watch the video, they'll probably stay on. And so therefore I get a high, I'm not going to get a 25% conversion rate. I might get 10%. But now, hopefully, and if you create a really good loop, that money you're making now will just pay for the advertising and then profit on top. Or you might even do it at break even, just to try and build the email subscriber list, because you realize that then we'll make money later on. Or you might break even to get the program and then upsell to higher later on. But again, it's all about business models, keeping it super fucking simple, and then really trying to understand, like, what are the key metrics, and then out of all the work, what work is the most valuable, and how do I double down on that and improve that? That'd be the thought process. Thoughts?
That's great. I appreciate it a bunch. That helps us a lot.
That help, John?
Yeah, that's awesome. I wasn't even thinking about half of that stuff. So thank you for that.
It's a really good question. I love it. And again, I think the one thing I took away from shutting down the Amazon UK business, and again, I think about it with FastTrack FBA, and we're restructuring it now, and also what we're doing in the Amazon business is like, what you see many times is there are a lot of people making, Elon Musk makes more money than all three of us combined in the entirety of our life. He'll make it in more than 1 year. But for some weird reason, he has the same number of hours in the day. So what you realize is just by doing more work doesn't help. You've got to think about, like, there is a way to do this better. And it's using this is the most important part. And a lot of time it's just sitting there thinking and talking to people who've already achieved what you want to say, how can I do this? And the more exposure you can get to that, the quicker you'll just find the optimal solution. Just like how to analyze a deal on Amazon, how to reprice, how to do all this. Just find people who've done it, and you'll probably figure it out. And then, again, learn the skill sets and you can apply them. It'd be great.
We usually ask for parting words, but those are great parting words. So where can the people find you?
FastTrackFBA.com, social medias. I'm probably most active on YouTube. That's a big thing. But yeah, FastTrack FBA, all of that. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for doing this, Tom. Go follow Tom, like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Peace.
Fantastic.